It's a very tragic situation, and it's the resumption of that period in the 1960s when 4 of our national leaders were assassinated. These extreme people, but very disturbing. And we should remember the old assassinations because we never solved them.
There's a lot of question marks, and let's see what gets revealed. Will there be a trial like Lee Harvey Oswald never have, for example?
How do you think RFK was killed?
The bodyguard shot him directly, point blank, in the head. The United States is unable to tell the truth about its mistakes and its failures.
Does it ring true to you that a 22-year-old young radicalized man could, with a single shot, pull off that assassination without other help? America has a long and tragic history of political assassinations, a subject which could seldom be more pertinent than this week. Robert F. Kennedy was fatally shot 57 years ago, leaving behind a complex legacy and an indelible mark on American history. Legendary film director Oliver Stone and his son Sean have delved into his incredible story and shocking demise in their new documentary, RFK Legacy, and they join me now. Well, welcome to both of you. Sean, we've never met. Great to meet you, albeit virtually. Oliver, great to see you again. Been a few years since we last were in this situation. So great to see you.
It's been a long time.
Yeah. How are you, Oliver, first of all?
Yeah, you've been very hot topics. You've been very busy in the last few years.
Yeah, well, you know all about hot topics. It has been hot topics. It feels very timely to have you guys with me to talk about this particular subject of your film, given what happened last week. And it sort of feels odd not to start with that. When you heard about the assassination of Charlie Kirk, Oliver, what was your reaction to it? What did you feel?
Of Mr. Kirk?
Yeah.
I regret it. It's a very tragic situation, and it's the resumption of that period in the 1960s when 4 of our national leaders were assassinated. Very disturbing and indicative of a violence in the citizenry that divides us. And it's only extremists, you know. It's extreme people, but very disturbing. And we should remember the old assassinations because we never solved them. We left it. That's part of the problem. We left them uncovered. We never told the truth. Bunch of lies, as you know.
Yeah, well, it's really interesting. I mean, Sean, before we get to your film, you know, from your perspective, what is happening, not just in America, but we'll focus on America for the purposes of this. What is happening that is making young people, it seems, from what happened last week, think that the only way to debate somebody is to shoot them?
Well, do you want to?
You take it.
I would suggest that we are in a polarized situation. Personally, I don't believe necessarily the narrative of the lone gunman. I think that there's a lot of question marks, and let's see what gets revealed in this coming time. Will there be a trial like Lee Harvey Oswald never have, for example? But look, we've seen, as my father mentioned, the lone gunman theory 4 times in the 60s, and I think in every case there was a greater conspiracy at work, as there was with Abraham Lincoln, for example. But in terms of the question about why young people are willing to shoot other people, we see with mass shootings and things like this. We are in a polarized time. We know this. We have to look at, as RFK Jr. has talked about, we do have to look at various drugs and things like this, prescription drugs. There's mental illness problems, it's clear. You know, a lot of young people are dealing with all kinds of mental disturbances, bipolarity, schizophrenia, you know, and you name it. So we have created a culture, I think, right now that is allowing people to celebrate Charlie Kirk's death, for example, right? Publicly. In the old days, that would have been done privately. As the film JFK, you see the guy in the bar, Guy Bannister is cheering, right? People like that are cheering, but it was the rare occasion. Yeah. Now you can go out there on Twitter and celebrate and get tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who cheer because of the nature of social media. So we are in a very, very polarized time, and it's scary, I think.
Yeah, I completely concur.
1 out of 100.
Oliver, yeah. 1
out of 100 people object, or say something ridiculous and mean, that gets projected on the internet to 100 or 1,000 times, you see. So it's not fair because most of the people are sane and most of the people are calmer. And that's the problem. The internet magnifies everything.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. And, I was thinking the other day that when I was young, it seems a long time ago now, but when I was a teenager, for example, the ability to consume the kind of content of Charlie Kirk being shot dead, that just didn't exist. You wouldn't see that as a teenager in the 70s. There was no ability to see it. The media just wouldn't show it to you. And then you had no phones, you had no internet, you had nothing like that. So I feel for young people in particular, I feel their brains are getting pretty scrambled by the constant and unrelenting amount of very negative dopamine stuff that they see. But let's get to the purpose of why you guys are here. Oliver, this movie about Robert F. Kennedy, like I say, it's obviously very timely, but you make a very good point that there were all these assassinations of incredibly important people in the 60s, and yet we still have so many unanswered questions about all of them. And in relation to RFK, obviously Sirhan is still in prison in California for killing RFK, but you believe, I think, and I've had this conversation with RFK's son, RFK Jr., you believe that may not be the case. Explain why.
It's quite, if no one's ever looked at this RFK case, one of the things that haunts me is that after the JFK success, I wanted to go on, and I tried to do a Martin Luther King, but it was frustrating. I couldn't get there, no financing. And at the same time, I always considered RFK. But Emilio Estevez directed a film about him, and he said publicly at the time, I couldn't go further because I saw what happened to Stone. He got so massively criticized. So as a result, the RFK case was let go. But it's as egregious as the JFK case. And in this film, thank God, Sean, which I'm very proud of, shows at the end a lot of the details of the assassination as explained by Robert. Because Robert has thought about this, and he's a very serious man. I'm very proud of this film. And I'm very proud. It's a family that has been ignored too much. We should get back into the RFK case. But Robert Kennedy himself has been under attack so much in the last few years, that it defeats the purpose of telling the truth. You see, you can't tell the truth without upsetting all these people who have beefs, who have objections. Well, let's listen to Robert Kennedy. He makes sense. Let's start with this film.
Well, let's take a look at a trailer from the movie.
I wanted to be working with nature.
He was appalled at what he saw. This is how he became the leading environmental lawyer in the United States.
There's no right to pollute. The polluter pays. My views are constantly misrepresented.
It's terrible what they did to suppress Bobby's free speech.
He accepted his burden, and he did his duty.
We have to make an effort to get beyond these rather difficult times.
We have to stop trying to destroy each other.
What we need in the United States is not division.
We have to find that place of light, of empathy, of compassion. I don't know if there's a curse. We do what we're supposed to do. The outcome's in God's hands.
It's a very powerful trailer, Oliver. But, in relation to that question I put a couple of minutes ago, how do you think RFK was killed? What do you think really happened?
Oh, I think the bodyguard, Sir Thane Cesar, who was standing 4 feet behind him, shot him directly, point blank, close contact in the head. And you should read people don't even remember that Thomas Noguchi was the autopsy. He wrote a great report that people ignored. The shot could not have come from the front. The shots were sprayed all over the place by Sirhan, who was tackled right away by Robert's bodyguard, Rayford Johnson. And in the melee, everybody got confused. But the LAPD is basically the most responsible because they closed off all the roads of investigation. There were 2 high-level detectives who had worked with the CIA in South America on their U.S. aid program, teaching torture, learning about torture, everything down there in South America that we did in that period with the CIA was passed on to the LAPD. And these people were all over the place. They didn't care about solving the case. They wanted to close the case as quickly as possible. The result is Sirhan, as we know, was brainwashed and completely out of it. He didn't even remember anything. And he says he was an innocent guy who was confused. And it shows it in the film. And Robert discusses all these points of evidence where the shots landed and the history of Thane Cesar, the bodyguard who was appointed to his bodyguard about 3 days or a week before and turned out to be, and then the LAPD didn't even take the gun from Cesar. They didn't even examine the gun. They just let him walk away.
And
See if it had fired, for example, right?
Yeah, well, Sean, I mean, look.
See if the gun had been fired.
Right, so Sean, it's a dramatic narrative that this film is telling. And like you said, I've spoken to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. about this. What happened to that bodyguard? Today's show is brought to you by Oxford Natural, makers of the Optimum Day and Optimum Night all-natural supplements. Thousands of Brits and Americans are already taking them with incredible results. Optimum Day is designed to boost your energy and support weight loss throughout the day. Optimum Night helps you relax and get deep, refreshing sleep. And don't just take their word for it. Here are just a few of their success stories. England football legend Michael Owen lost 40 pounds. Robbie, the face of AFTV, dropped over 100 pounds. Linda, a top law firm executive, lost 50 pounds. And Anita, an immigration lawyer, shed 60 pounds. To watch their full stories and find out more, scan the QR code on your screen or visit oxfordnatural.com/Piers. And here's the best part. Use the code Piers, P-I-E-R-S, and get 70% off your first order. Get 70% off with the promo code Piers.
Yeah, Cesar, he ultimately ended up in the Philippines, and it was an interesting little potential story if Robert Jr. had been able to go to him. Basically, they were communicating, I think, before COVID, I believe, and Cesar wanted money to talk. Now, in the film, we don't say Cesar actually did it. We do say that he did. We know he drew the gun. We know that the bullets, according to the autopsy, came from the rear, and they came from about an inch behind the head, and they came within an inch or two behind the head and in the back. So the killer was in the back. So Cesar could have either held him while someone shot him, or he could have himself shot him. We don't make the accusation because we can't prove it. But it's sad that RFK Jr. never had a chance to confront him and actually maybe hear a story that he might have been able to tell before Cesar passed away.
Well, you see Kennedy, Robert, in the footage, he turns around and he tries to deal with it, but he's cut off. He makes the move to back behind him.
Grab the bow tie.
Which you would do too as a reaction to the pain.
Right, and Oliver, what was the motivation for this bodyguard to kill Robert Kennedy?
Well, if Robert Kennedy was going to be president of the United States, I think everyone kind of knew that he had the momentum, the big mo, that he had the spirit to end the Vietnam War, that Johnson was deeply unpopular, and it was looking like a clear path because he'd won the primary in California as well as other states. California sealed the deal, and he was almost killed that night, right? They won the primary. I don't remember exactly. Yeah. He announces it. He walks off the stage into the kitchen there.
So when we talk about, for example, a military-industrial complex, right? You talk about, we know the CIA has elements that are involved in assassination. We know this, right? They were working on assassination plots against people like Castro, but there were countless other foreign leaders. And I think the whole point is that people who question the CIA's role in someone like Cesar, Lisa Pease is an author who's done huge work into this investigation for decades. She says, as her research shows, Cesar actually listed the CIA as an employer of his at one point. Robert Mayhew was very integrally connected, as we know, with the Howard Hughes empire of military-industrial, airplanes and jets and things like this. Also, Mayhew was then part of the contracting of Cesar. So he's a key character. We don't get into Mayhew, but Robert Mayhew is one of those great mystery men that does tie mafia, CIA, LAPD. I mean, he's one of those great connector types that you have to look to as an investigator.
The point was that whoever pulled off the original JFK assassination knew for sure that Robert Kennedy was going to reopen the case And he said so before he died
So-
to students.
We knew that Robert Kennedy had enraged the mob by going after them aggressively after that his father had supposedly done these deals with the mob, and then they all felt betrayed. What is your presumption if it was this bodyguard and that gun that killed Kennedy, and if he was in the pay of the CIA, what would have been the motivation of the CIA to take out Robert Kennedy then? What is the working theory you have about that?
Well, because they were involved very deeply in the JFK assassination. There could have been nothing but recrimination on them. In fact, they would have gotten rid of that agency, which we should have done back in the 1960s. The CIA has been one of the most detrimental organizations to our security, the real United States that matters. They are a corrupt organization, evil organization. There are not everybody in it because they work compartmentally, of course. There's not a lot of, you can't say the whole CIA, but definitely they're involved on numerous levels in so much evil, so much evil. There was a coup against de Gaulle right before they killed Kennedy, a coup that was, Dulles was involved. Allen Dulles was the guy that Kennedy fired, and it's a dirty, dirty story, but we don't have time on television to go into the history of this thing. Robert didn't even want to know about it until he read until Paul Schrade called him up. Paul Schrade had been shot in the face right next to him and survived, and told him, read this report, the Thomas Noguchi report, which he read. He was shocked about his own father, and thank God he's one of the Kennedys that's responsible. And it's like Hamlet, do you go after your father's killers or not? Well, Robert Kennedy has proven that he's willing to do that, and he has courage, tremendous courage, to stand up to all the attacks that have been put on him. Here's a man who's done so much good in his life. He's fought, environment. He's fought mercury. He's a progeny from the days of Rachel Carson, DDT. Remember the DDT controversy? They didn't take any responsibility for it. Robert was a big fan of Rachel Carson, who he met as a kid. And as he grew up, he fought against mercury. He fought against he cleaned up the Hudson River, which was a mess in New York State. And then he went on to this COVID, the COVID whole experience. And that's another weird story that doesn't hold up because the United States is unable to tell the truth about its mistakes and its failures. That's the essential problem here, Piers. Goes back to so many cases.
And Oliver,
just to finish on that CIA point, if you want, just the CIA. Why? I mean, again, if you're talking about JFK saying he wanted to splinter the CIA into 1,000 pieces, right? RFK was his right-hand man in his administration, right? He really was, and you'll see through this documentary how important RFK was to JFK's success. And the fact that JFK is gone and RFK is running for president. If he became president in '68, he's gonna work to end the Vietnam War, which originally began as a CIA war. If people recall how we got involved, he's gonna investigate his brother's assassination. So the people that are involved in killing JFK, I believe, were wanting to get rid of RFK as well.
And Oliver, do you believe that there is information in the RFK files which the federal government has in its possession, which the American people have not seen?
Well, we haven't seen the RFK file in depth.
Right.
But let's talk about JFK file. That's really been screwed up. If you remember correctly, the film was made in '91. That's almost 40 years ago, right?
35, yeah.
35 years ago. And the act of Congress said, JFK Records Act, bring out the classified files, unclassify them. And then 8 years ago, Mr. Trump said, I want these files open. Again, he reiterated it. Nothing happened. 8 months ago, Mr. Trump said, I don't want any conditions put on these files. I want them open. So there's no reason not to give us all the files. So what happens? Nothing. The archives are a mess because people have gone up there. Nothing is nothing is indexed correctly. It's not even digitized, and it should be by now. So many years have gone by. They could have done it, the archivist was not paying any attention, didn't care about this case. That's the problem. And on top of it, files have strange stories. For example, we don't even know that the Records Board, which existed from 94 to 98, actually saw everything. The chief, Tunheim, the chief of that commission, never saw most of these files that have still, because partly one of the reasons we think is because the CIA gave the files to the archivist before the commission could work from 94 to 98. So in sometime after 91, when the film was made, 92, the act is passed. Between 92 and 94, some strange things happened. In other words, you need the full cooperation of the government to open these things, and not that there's going to be proof in them, but there's going to be clues, and there's always been clues. There's already a lot of clues that came out since the movie came out, a lot. And I tried to put them in our documentary, which I hope you see from 2021, JFK
Revisited?
JFK Revisited. It's a beautiful documentary. It's 2 hours long. It's well worth it. I recommend it again because it goes into details that were not revealed in the film and have since been revealed. It's probably the most important documentary I've done next to Untold History of the United States. I'm most proud of it.
And Oliver, just bringing things back to where we are this week, the world is being told that this was a lone shooter who killed Charlie Kirk, this guy, Tyler Robinson, that he was radicalized by the left and so on. Given all that you've been talking about in relation to two of the most high-profile lone shooter assassinations in American history, do you think, conspiracy theories are running riot already about this, but does it ring true to you that a 22-year-old young radicalized man could, with a single shot, pull off that assassination without other help? It's not just how the news is told, but what's left out, which concerns me. And when a friend in the business recommended I try Ground News, I gave it a go. Quite honestly, I was impressed. It does something brilliant, which most news platforms are afraid to do. It's an app and a website that lines up coverage of the same story from across the spectrum, left, right, international, and lays it all out side by side. That kind of transparency is increasingly rare and is vital. Ground News helps you to dig in and find the facts by showing you who owns each outlet, what their bias is, and which stories are being buried. Has an especially revealing blind spot feed, which services stories being reported almost exclusively by only one side of the political divide. I want to hear every side before making up my mind. Ground News makes that possible and easy. It's independent, funded by subscribers and not corporate interests, just like my show. And it's a tool that puts the power back in your hands. Go to groundnews.com/Piers to claim your 40% discount to the unlimited access Vantage plan and see what everyone else is missing. That's groundnews.com/Piers.
Piers, I understand, but I cannot comment on a case that has so many loose ends. Even more important is the fact that President Trump was almost killed in Butler, Pennsylvania. And then again, was almost hurt in Florida on his golf course. Those two incidents alone merit further investigation. I don't know anything about the boy in Butler, Pennsylvania. Don't. I don't know. The parents.
Nobody does.
Nothing has really been.
It's very weird.
So here we are. This is the kind of problem I said was we don't reveal to the American public because we don't trust them. So whoever has information doesn't give it. It hides it. This is the way of our government. This is a CIA problem because they represent the covert state. And I have to include the FBI, which has been more honest in some cases, but still, FBI is part of this too.
Sean, what do you hope the film may trigger in terms of a response?
It's an interesting question. The reason that I set out to make the film initially was RFK Jr. was running for president, and it was a great parallel to his father, right? He's carrying on the legacy of his father and his uncle. His uncle became president, his father was struck down. And there was a narrative when RFK Jr. ran for president that the media, the mainstream legacy media pushed, which was that RFK Jr. was a black sheep that he had, kind of gone off the reservation. He was not following in their footsteps. And I said, well, actually, if you look at the father and the uncle, they were insiders who were also challenging the establishment. So I wanted to tell that story of how JFK challenged the military-industrial complex and how RFK Sr. likewise challenged that system, and I believe paid the price as a result. And RFK Jr., he came up challenging big pharma, challenging big agriculture, right? He became very successful at it until he questioned the safety of vaccines, and that was the sacred cow that essentially they assassinated his character as a result. Remember, before this, RFK Jr. was beloved by the Democrats. He was beloved by the left. As soon as he started to question these things, they committed a character assassination. And during COVID, the same, right? And to this very day, right now, they're trying to get rid of him as the head of HHS. So I think that hopefully people will see this film and recognize that RFK Jr. is in the legacy of his father and uncle. He is asking the right questions. He is challenging an establishment that is very very difficult because of the amount of money involved, right? At the end of the day, the military-industrial complex, which includes big pharma, is a huge, hundreds of billions of dollars, perhaps trillions of dollars are at stake here, and that's why they're trying to silence him, I believe. So hopefully people watch this film and say, hey, I respect RFK Jr. If I don't always agree with him, which I don't always agree with him on policies, but I respect his background, what he's done, and who he is.
I've interviewed him. I've interviewed him.
Distinguished families.
I've interviewed him 4 or 5 times now, and I find him very compelling to talk to.
I want to say one thing. Have you clarified? You didn't clarify his vaccine. What he said about vaccines. He never said I'm not against vaccines.
No, that's right.
I just want them tested. Carefully, and that's been the problem. It's the testing.
No, I think he made that clear to me.
And that's why he fired the CDC.
He's been very misrepresented, I think, by people who have a vested interest in misrepresenting him. Oliver, I can't wait to see this film. It sounds fascinating. What you've been saying, both of you, has been fascinating.
Well, also watch the previous documentary, please.
I will. Now you mentioned it, I will. I wanted to ask you, Oliver, just quickly about Robert Redford, who sadly died yesterday. You never worked with Redford, but there was a Hollywood story, and you can clarify this now, that Redford was going to produce and star in a biopic about George Washington, about his life before the American Revolution and through his presidency, and that apparently he approached you to direct it, but it never materialized. Is that true?
That was true. That we had discussions about it. Frankly, I loved Redford. I admired him, but I never quite saw him in a wig. But I think he's a wonderful actor. But still, that was a stretch to be George Washington. But I believe, honestly, if we'd really worked at it, he could have done it. We just never had a good script, and I didn't have the time to work on it.
He appeared in, I interviewed him once at CNN, actually. I really liked him. And I worked out he appeared in so many of my personal favourite movies. All the President's Men, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, The Sting, The Way We Were. There's so many. And obviously he was sort of impossibly handsome, which many felt denigrated slightly from his abilities as an actor. How did you rate him as an actor and as a movie star?
I think he did a great job as an actor. He was so handsome and attractive and romantic that he could have made a fortune continuing in those roles. But he always played an outlier, somebody who didn't quite believe what they were feeding us.
Yes.
And I think that's a beautiful story. He did it consistently through his life, and I got to know him a bit. Of course, at Sundance, where he lived, and it was a beautiful setup. He was a powerful force, and I think he was underestimated, yes, in his lifetime.
When I interviewed him, I asked him to name his favourite Redford movie, and he said Butch Cassidy, because he said the filming of it with his great friend Paul Newman, that's when they first really became great mates, and he loved him for life after that. But he said also riding the horses, which he loved, the country terrain that they did it in. And he said also playing an outlaw, because actually that's how he always saw himself, as a bit of an outlaw.
Yeah. 3 Days of the Condor. That's another.
Yes.
That's another
Yeah.
classic, right? Where it shows some of these CIA assassin squads, right?
Yeah. And finally, Oliver.
Yeah, I love quiz show.
Yeah, well, Chris Schroeder was great. Finally, Oliver, I just wanted to ask you very quickly about Vladimir Putin, because of course you did a fascinating interview with him. At the time in 2023, you said Putin was a great leader for his country and said he was very refined. And he got a bit of blowback for that. But when you see what's happened with the war in Ukraine, what is your view of Putin today?
You have always got me into the hot seat because you know I speak my heart. Frankly, nothing's changed. To me, Ukraine is a tragedy pushed by the United States. We were after Russia. We've been after Russia, frankly, since 1917, 18, 19. We invaded Russia. We've done to Russia, constantly treated it like a boogeyman. Roosevelt is the only president, and Kennedy were the only two presidents that gave it the benefit of the doubt. And in time, you realize that the more you trust, the more you are trusted. Trust works between nations. We have treated them as vile outcasts. Our media has been awful, awful, awful. They don't re-examine their own prejudices. It's been, frankly, reading the news and following it has been very depressing. But the truth is that Ukraine is a corrupt country, and the people who are running it are really corrupt. And they don't deserve the kind of money they were giving them. We're supporting, like in Vietnam regime, we're supporting a corrupt regime. We throw money away like it's senseless.
I think just to add a couple things on the Russia war, we talked recently to some advisors to Putin, and you have to recognize that Putin is very restrained. If Russia was doing to Ukraine what Israel has done to Gaza, I think there would be a huge different shift in perspective on things, right? I mean, the truth is Israel's gotten away with destroying Gaza. Russia's not treating Kiev that way for a very important reason. Kiev is historically considered part of Russia. You understand? Historically, ancestrally, they are connected. So Putin has been very restrained in all our conversations. We've understood he could have pushed. There are many people saying, advisors that are right-wing, more right-wing than him, saying that there are weapons coming from Romania and Poland, bomb the weapons depots, right? I think Putin has been very restrained in his war. And I think you compare what happened, the amount of civilians killed in Ukraine compared to Gaza, and the statistics speak for themselves.
What the West doesn't understand, and never did, is that Putin doesn't want Ukraine back. He wants Ukraine neutral, and he said that time and time again, neutral. Doesn't want NATO and all its people and its right-wing factor in Ukraine. And he's defending his own country because it's like Canada to us. If the Chinese or the Russians were in Canada like we are in Ukraine, we'd be freaking out.
The Cuban Missile Crisis is a great example of what happened when the Russians tried to bring missiles 90 miles from our coast. That's what Kiev and whatnot is to Russia. So we have to look at it, as Jeffrey Sachs has pointed out, I think more eloquently than we can right now. I think a very similar perspective to what we have.
Well, it's been great talking to you guys. Oliver, great to catch up with you. Sean, great to finally have a chat with you too. I wish you all the very best with your film. I can't wait to watch it. And I'm going to go back home tonight, Oliver, pour myself a nice glass of something red from France and watch your other JFK film you referenced earlier. And I will enjoy it, and I will toast your good health. Hello and welcome. We begin with some breaking news. Woke is dead. The war on common sense is officially over. Cancelled celebrities are emerging from Twitter jail. Virtue signaling has been outlawed under punishment of mass ridicule. And we are finally free to call a spade a spade. So what was the cause of death? How did the silenced majority finally win? And what exactly is going to take its place? Woke is Dead is my definitive story on the rise and fall of woke, as well as the common sense heroes and PC villains who have dominated news and culture across 10 years of madness. It's also my personal roadmap back to a less divided world. A world where we can agree to disagree. where debate triumphs over censorship and where common sense is king. You will be shocked by how much you agree with me. Piers Morgan Uncensored is proudly independent. The only boss around here is me. If you enjoy our show, we ask for only one simple thing. Hit subscribe on YouTube and follow Piers Morgan Uncensored on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And in return, we will continue our mission to inform, irritate and entertain. And we'll do it all for free. Independent, uncensored media has never been more critical, and we couldn't do it without you.